Quote. Just, you know how to push his buttons. As if the bruises were something I had chosen. For 18 years, every time my father hit me, my mother waited until he left the room and then said some version of that line. And for 18 years, I believed her. I believed I was the problem. The day I moved out, she called and told me I was destroying the family. I said, you watched him destroy me for 18 years and said nothing. She hung up. 6 months of silence followed. Then she called again, crying, and she said something I never expected to hear from her. It wasn't an apology. It was bigger than that. And it changed everything. Before I go on, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with what I'm about to share. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. My name is Megan. I'm 24. I'm a nurse at a small community hospital in Ohio. And I want to take you back to the summer I turned 14, the summer I finally understood that my mother was never going to protect me. If you drove past our house on Maple Ridge Lane, you'd think you were looking at the most American family on the block. A white colonial with black shutters. A lawn so even it looked like Richard Moore mowed it with a ruler, which, honestly, he might have. There was always a flag on the porch. Always a wreath on the door that matched the season. And always a Ford F-250 in the driveway, washed every Saturday morning before anyone else on the street was awake. My father was a deacon at Grace Baptist Church. He owned a small construction company, about 15 guys, mostly commercial renovations and municipal contracts. He coached Little League for 3 years, not because he loved baseball, but because the parents in the bleachers were the same people who sat on the town zoning board. Everything Richard Moore did had an audience. And every audience had a purpose. My mother, Linda, was the woman who always showed up to potluck with a warm casserole and a cardigan buttoned to the collar, hair pinned neatly back, smile soft, voice low. She called every man, sir, and every woman, sweetheart. If you asked anyone in town to describe her, they would have said, devoted wife. Good Christian woman. And then there was me, the quiet girl in the third pew every Sunday, sitting between my parents with my hands folded in my lap, wearing long sleeves in July. Nobody asked why. Not once. Not the Sunday school teachers. Not the neighbors. Not the women who told my mother what a beautiful family she had. Nobody looked past the flag on the porch, or the perfectly trimmed lawn, or my father's handshake, firm enough to command respect, gentle enough to fool everyone else. If you'd driven past our house, you would have been wrong about us. Everyone was. The first time I remember it clearly, I was 10. I had forgotten to wash the dishes after dinner. Not refused, forgotten. I was doing homework at the kitchen table, and the plates were still in the sink when my father came in from the garage. He didn't yell. That's what people never understand. Richard Moore didn't raise his voice. He pulled his chair back slowly, set both hands flat on the table, and said, in that low, even tone that still makes my spine lock, come here. The bedroom door closed. What happened behind it, I won't describe. I'll just tell you that the next morning, I counted 3 bruises below my ribs on the left side, and I learned to wash the dishes before I sat down to do anything else. What I remember most isn't the pain. It's what came after. My mother walked into my room about 20 minutes later, after his truck pulled out of the driveway. She sat on the edge of my bed. She didn't look at the bruises. She looked at my face and whispered, you know Daddy doesn't like dirty dishes. Why do you keep pushing him? As if I had pressed a button. As if what happened to me was a natural consequence of my own carelessness. I was 10. My brother Ethan was 4. He was in the living room watching cartoons while it happened. My father never touched him. Not once, back then. Ethan was the son, the one who carried the name. The one my father called, Buddy, and took to job sites on Saturdays. I used to think the difference between us was simple. Ethan was good, and I was the problem. It took me 14 more years to understand that wasn't true. By the time I was 14, I had been to the emergency room 3 times. Each visit followed the same script. My mother drove. My father came along, calm and concerned, his hand resting on my shoulder like a father in a Hallmark movie. She's so clumsy, Linda would tell the intake nurse. Always running around, never looking where she's going. And she'd laugh, soft, practiced. The nurse would smile back. Why wouldn't she? The man standing next to us was a church deacon. He coached Little League. He smelled like Old Spice and fresh sawdust. The third visit, though, I remember the doctor pausing. She looked at my arm. Then at my chart. Then at me. I could feel the question before she asked it. Is someone hurting you? My father's hand tightened on my shoulder, not hard enough for the doctor to see, just hard enough for me to feel. She fell down the stairs again, he said, smiling. I keep telling her, no running in socks. The doctor wrote something in my chart. Years later, I found out what it said: recurrent injuries inconsistent with stated mechanism. Recommend CPS follow-up. But CPS never came. In a town where Richard Moore had shaken hands with everyone, from the fire chief to the county clerk, a note in a chart was just a note in a chart. I didn't know it then, but that paper trail had already begun. 5 visits. Dates. Descriptions. A doctor's quiet observations sitting in a medical record system, waiting, not for a courtroom, not for a lawyer, just for the day I'd be old enough, and informed enough, to ask for it. That day was still 10 years away. At 16, I got a part-time job at the pharmacy on Grant Street. I didn't ask my father's permission. I asked my school counselor to sign the work permit, told him it was for college savings, and started bagging prescriptions 3 afternoons a week at $9.25 an hour. My father found out within a week. He didn't like it, not because he cared about my schedule, but because a girl with her own paycheck is a girl with options. And Richard Moore did not raise his children to have options he couldn't control. No daughter of mine needs to work, he said at dinner. His voice was pleasant. His eyes were not. People will think I can't provide. I kept the job. I kept every dollar in a shoebox under my bed, tucked behind a stack of old textbooks. After 6 months, I had $412. Enough for a security deposit on the smallest apartment in the county, if I ever needed one. My mother saw the shoebox once. I came home and found her standing in my room, staring at it on my desk like it was a grenade. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with an expression I couldn't decode, part fear, part something else. Envy, maybe. Or recognition. Like she was looking at a version of herself who had made a different choice at 22. Then my father found it. He took every dollar, counted it at the kitchen table in front of me, folded the bills into his wallet, and said, "Money earned under my roof belongs to this household." I didn't cry that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The next day, I started hiding cash inside a tampon box in the bathroom cabinet, and I started counting days. At 17, I had saved enough for a deposit and first month's rent on a studio apartment 2 towns over. I'd been accepted into the nursing program at the community college. I applied without telling anyone, used the school library computer, and had the acceptance letter sent to a P.O. box I rented for $11 a month. But mail is fragile in a house where one person controls everything. The day a second copy of my financial aid summary accidentally arrived at the house, my father was the one who checked the mailbox. He brought the envelope to dinner and set it next to the salt shaker. He didn't mention it until we were all seated, forks in hand, steam rising from the mashed potatoes my mother had spent an hour making. "What's this?" he asked, conversational, almost curious. I looked at the envelope. My stomach dropped. "It's mine," I said. He opened it slowly, read it, then looked at me, not angry, not yet. "You think you're leaving?" It wasn't a question. Nobody in this family makes a decision without going through me. He tore the letter slowly. One clean rip down the middle. Then another. 4 pieces, laid neatly beside his plate like part of the place setting. My mother cut her meat. Ethan, 11 and small for his age, stared at his plate. Nobody spoke. After dinner, I went to my room and called the admissions office from under my blanket. "I need a replacement copy," I whispered. The original was damaged. The woman on the other end paused, then said gently, "We'll send a new one to whatever address you'd like, sweetheart." I gave her the P.O. box number. I left on my 18th birthday. My father was at a job site, a commercial renovation 40 minutes away. I had checked his schedule the night before. He wouldn't be back until 6. My mother was in the kitchen. I had 2 suitcases, a backpack, and my friend Rachel's Honda idling at the curb. When I carried the first suitcase down the stairs, my mother didn't turn around. She stood at the counter, washing a dish that was already clean. "If you leave," she said quietly, "who's going to help me with dinner?" It wasn't really about dinner. I know that now. It was the only way Linda Moore knew how to say, "Please don't go," without admitting why she needed me to stay. If I was in the house, I was the lightning rod. If I left, the lightning would have to land somewhere else. I set the suitcase by the door and walked to Ethan's room. He was sitting on his bed, 12 years old, trying not to cry. "I'm going to come back for you," I said, holding both his hands. "I promise." He nodded. He didn't ask me to stay. Even at 12, he understood that staying meant something worse than missing me. I hugged him, picked up my bags, and walked out the front door. My mother never turned around. But when I got to Rachel's car and looked back at the house, just once, I saw her standing behind the living room curtain, one hand pressed flat against the glass, watching. For 1 second, the curtain stayed open. Then it fell. That was the last time I saw her for 6 months. 3 weeks after I left, I was sitting on the floor of my studio apartment, mattress on the ground, one lamp from Goodwill, curtains from the IKEA clearance rack for $7, and for the first time in my life, I noticed something. Silence. Not the kind that comes before a door slams. The kind that just exists. Peaceful. Ordinary. Then my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. But some part of me, the part that had spent 18 years hoping she would choose me, picked up. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask about the apartment, the job, the program. She went straight to it. Your father isn't eating. He's not sleeping. The house feels wrong without you. A pause. Then, you're destroying this family, Megan. Do you know what people at church are saying? I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear and felt something shift. Not anger. Something quieter. Clarity. You watched him destroy me for 18 years and said nothing, I said. Don't call me to say I'm the one breaking things. Silence. Not the good kind. Then a click. She hung up. I set the phone down, leaned my head against the wall, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. It looked like a map of somewhere I'd never been. I didn't cry. I think I had used up all my tears somewhere between 10 and 17. There was nothing left, just a hollow, ringing quiet. I thought she would call back. That night. The next day. That week. She didn't. 6 months passed. I finished my first year of nursing school with a 3.7 GPA and a permanent knot between my shoulder blades from working double shifts at the nursing home on Route 9. My apartment was small but clean, a succulent on the windowsill, a second-hand bookshelf, scrubs drying on a rack by the radiator. It wasn't much, but every object in that room was something I had chosen. That made it more mine than any bedroom I'd ever had on Maple Ridge Lane. I tried calling Ethan 3 times. Each time, it went to voicemail. The 4th time, a text came back from my father's number. Stop calling this phone. Richard had taken Ethan's cell. Of course he had. You can't control a boy if his sister keeps reminding him there's a world outside the house. At night, I'd lie in bed and think, is he okay? Is Ethan sitting in that room right now, counting the cracks on the ceiling the way I used to? And then the harder question, the one that sat on my chest like a stone, did I abandon him? One evening, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw the Grace Baptist Church page. There was a photo of my father, grinning wide, arm around Pastor David, standing in front of a banner I had to read twice to believe, 2025 Man of the Year nominee, Richard Moore. Below the photo, a comment from Linda's account, so proud of this man and this family. God is good. The family in that photo was 3 people. I had been cropped out. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the app, turned off the light, and lay in the dark. The silence that used to feel safe felt different now. Then, at 11 o'clock on a cold night in mid-October, my phone rang again. I almost didn't recognize her voice, not because it had changed, but because I had never heard my mother cry like that. Not controlled, not quiet, raw, the kind of sound that comes out when you've held something inside so long it finally breaks the container. Megan. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. Megan, please don't hang up. I didn't speak. I just held the phone. He started hitting Ethan. The room tilted. I pressed my hand flat against the mattress to steady myself, like the floor might actually move. When? I asked. After you left. Slowly at first, shoving, grabbing. Ethan talked back about going to prom with his friends. Your father, she couldn't finish. She tried again. He hit him, Megan. Hard, like he used to. She couldn't say it, but we both heard it. And then she said the sentence I had replayed in my mind 1,000 times, the one I never expected to hear from Linda Moore. I recorded it, she said. On my old phone. I have the audio. His voice. What he said. All of it. Megan, I was wrong about everything. About all of it. I'm so sorry. I sat on the edge of my mattress in the dark and felt something crack open inside me that I thought had healed shut years ago. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet. Not relief. Something more complicated, like watching someone you had given up on take one small step in the right direction and not knowing whether to feel hope or grief for the 18 years of steps that never came. Send me the file, I said. Tonight. And don't delete it. She sent it at 11:47 p.m. 4 minutes and 22 seconds long. I moved fast. The next morning, I called a legal aid office 2 counties over, far enough that nobody would recognize the Moore name, and explained everything. The attorney, a woman named Janet, listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You have options. But your father has a head start on the narrative. And in small towns, narrative is everything." She was right. While I was making calls and researching restraining orders, Richard was doing what Richard does best, managing the story. Within a week, the version circulating through Grace Baptist Church went like this: Megan Moore, troubled since adolescence, possibly using substances, mentally unstable, trying to tear apart a God-fearing family for reasons no one could quite explain. Richard had told Pastor David in private, voice heavy with fatherly concern, that he'd tried everything. That he prayed for me every night. That he feared I was going down a dangerous path. Pastor David called me to check in. His tone was careful, pastoral. But underneath his questions, I could hear the shape of my father's words. "Your father says you've been going through a hard time, Megan. Is there anything the church can do?" It spread beyond the church. A coworker at the hospital, someone I barely knew, stopped me in the break room. "Hey, I heard you're dealing with some family stuff. You okay?" Someone mentioned. She trailed off, embarrassed. In a town of 14,000 people, reputation moves faster than truth. And my father had spent 3 decades building his, brick by careful brick. Who was going to believe a 24-year-old nurse over a deacon who had poured the foundation for the church's new fellowship hall with his own crew, at cost? Nobody. Not yet. The thing about Richard Moore is that he doesn't just control people. He controls their exits. And Ethan's exit had a price tag, $38,000. That was the savings account my parents had built since Ethan was born. College fund. Every birthday check from Grandma. Every tax refund bonus. All of it sitting in a savings account at First National under Richard's name. Legally, the money was his. And he knew it. Ethan called me from a friend's phone one night, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd been accepted into an engineering program, a good school, reasonable tuition, 2 hours from home. A real way out. He sat me down at the kitchen table, Ethan said. He didn't yell. He was calm. He said, "You want this money. You do what I say. No contact with your sister. You don't tell anyone what happens in this house. And you come to the Man of the Year ceremony. You wear the suit I bought you. And you smile." I closed my eyes. "Meg, I need that money. I can't afford it without it. I don't know what to do." There it was. The leash. The same one Richard had used on me, just with a bigger number attached. He wasn't a father saving for his son's future. He was a man who understood that the cheapest prison is the one you build out of someone else's hope. "Don't do anything yet," I told Ethan. "Don't agree. Don't refuse. Just wait." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote 3 things. 1. ER records. My right to request them. 2. Linda's audio recording. Ohio is a one-party consent state. 3. I needed a stage. And Richard had just built me one. 2 days later, my phone rang. Not my mother this time. My father. His voice was warm, relaxed. The voice he used at church barbecues and town council meetings. The one designed to make you forget he was capable of anything else. "Megan, sweetheart." He hadn't called me that in years. "I know we've had our differences, but I want to put that behind us. The church is hosting the Man of the Year dinner next Saturday. The whole congregation will be there, 200 people, maybe more. I want our family up on that stage together. All 4 of us. Show everybody the Moores are solid." I held the phone and said nothing. "Pastor David thinks it would be real meaningful," he continued. "The prodigal daughter comes home. People love that story." I understood exactly what this was. Not an olive branch. A stage direction. Richard needed the image of his family intact, his daughter returned, smiling, standing beside high